I'm your host, Bryan Abou Chacra, and on this week's episode, we will be reviewing Maternity Leave and The Whole Truth, the 15th and 16th episode of Season 2 of Lost. And on this week's episode, I brought my best friend and co-host from the Go Home Show, Eric Baudour, with me.
Hi, I'm here to talk about Lost and all my favorite TV shows, which are just Lost.
Just Lost?
It's only Lost. Yep. No other good TV shows.
What would be your favorite TV show, actually? I don't think I know what your favorite TV show is. I would guess Home Movies.
Yeah, it would probably be Home Movies. I haven't watched that in a long time.
Yeah?
It's like time to watch it again. I know that you go and watch that stuff like annually.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that in like a long time. But like as far as other TV goes, it's like I don't watch a lot of other TV. And not anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Kids in the Hall is probably up there as like one of my favorite, but that's like a whole different for like sketch comedy and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. The Simpsons, but like that's such a we grew up in the 90s and that's what everyone's favorite TV show, 'cause that's when it was good.
Yeah.
Man, consistently like my favorite TV show, I guess it would be Home Movies. I think that show was like just really, really good.
It is.
So you guys can check out my podcast called Getting Big with Small. It's my Home Movies podcast where we review 2 episodes of Home Movies at a time.
Yep.
And see just where they connect later. A lot of Easter eggs.
A lot of them.
Lot of will they, won't they with Jason and Melissa.
Yeah.
What's Coach McGurk up to? Just that kind of stuff. So it's like this show, but it's with Home Movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So check it out.
Check it out. It's going to be a really good show. We'll have a part of the show where you guys vote on what your favorite part of each episode is.
Yep.
It's going to be called Think Big, Vote Small.
Nice. That's good. This is already better than the Go Home Show.
This might already be better than the podcast it's on right now.
The hell yeah. I'm excited to talk about Lost.
Yeah, especially because you haven't watched an episode of Lost since probably the season finale.
Yeah, I don't.
Or series finale.
Yeah, I don't go back and watch. I know we go back, but I don't go back and watch a lot of old TV. I don't watch a lot of TV. Period.
Yeah.
I used to like TV a lot. I used to want to write for television.
Yeah.
I took like screenwriting classes. I wrote like a lot of spec scripts and stuff. And then it got to a point where like I had no passion for television at all. I think TV has really turned into, it's always been kind of a trite medium, but I think it's turned into something that is just like intentionally obtuse for like a lot of television shows. And sort of like everything is just, we were just talking about this. Everything is Game of Thrones. Everything is like a deliberate mystery that doesn't need to be, and like dialogue and the way that no people talk, and making sure that like you have your like little hooks in before you go to like,
yeah.
No one's doing anything interesting in television because everyone's trying to do the same thing. Everyone's trying to make Breaking Bad. And instead you get The Walking Dead.
Or they're trying to make Lost again, too.
Yeah. I agree. Lost was the last TV show. That's probably the last TV show that I'll ever watch with passion.
Yeah.
In a way where, like, we were talking about it every week. We couldn't wait for, like, the next ones.
Yeah.
We all had, like, really different opinions on stuff. And it was really cool to, like, discuss. That's why I like your show, because it, like, it brings back what was the most fun about Lost for me.
Yeah.
If you don't watch ahead, if you're just watching along with your show and everything,
yeah,
I think it's a really cool way to like discuss and get into a show that is really contingent on not knowing exactly what's going to happen next and seeing the pieces sort of unfold and be put together. Like watching this with friends and then talking about it and like dissecting it to see where it goes, I think was my favorite part of Lost. Yeah. Because everything else in Lost is stuff that I don't like in television, and I feel like everybody just does all the time now. It's in every episode of The Walking Dead and every episode of like Game of Thrones and all of these TV shows. Where are we going? You'll have to wait and see until we get there. Boom. Commercials.
Yeah.
Like if everything is like arms out to the side going like, oh, wouldn't you like to know? Yeah, I would. Is there a way that you could tell me without being deliberately obtuse? No. Okay, cool. There's no creativity. I don't want to say no creativity, but I feel like it's the same creativity going into every single TV show right now.
Yep.
And if that bums you out to hear, and if that's making you go, no, my show that I like isn't like that. Watch 4 other shows you don't usually watch.
Yeah.
And laugh at all the parts that you go, why are they doing this? And then go back and watch your show and go, uh-oh.
Yep. It really is like that. And like...
I think Lost really wrote a formula for that.
They did. And that's what I was going to say. Every so often, I would say probably every 5 to 8 years, on average, you get kind of like a new cycle of how shows are done.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. It's kind of like once in like a half generation.
Right? So in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s kind of era, you had that whole Law and Order and the whole crime drama and the NCIS and the all of those shows. You had 5 different versions of each.
And before that, everything was a multicam sitcom.
Right? Cheers.
Everything in the
Friends.
90s. Everything in the 90s was a multicam sitcom. Oh,
right.
wow.
So each time you kind of like... something comes out that's new and it's like, whoa. So for instance, Friends. It was a multicam sitcom, but it really dove into all of the characters in the ensemble cast, not just, whoever was in Cheers.
And that was definitely Seinfeld too.
Exactly.
Where the show about nothing was the thing. And that's, I mean, if you're going to dissect TV to like a level of that, I think you're definitely right that every 8 years, 10 years or something, you have like a different cycle of shows. And right now it's...
the Game of Thrones cycle.
It is. It's long-form storytelling in a way that's, like, just intentionally, like, red herring, misleading, over to one side. Oh, no, here's a sudden death. My problem with that stuff is that everyone's doing it. I still haven't... we were talking about this. I've watched all of the first season of True Detective, except the last episode, because I genuinely don't care what happens, what any of these characters do, whatever. It was like watching it and going, yeah, this would have been a cool movie.
Yeah.
But my complaint with TV is my complaint about movies at this point. Like, I don't need 2 hours and 45 minutes of Captain America.
No.
It would be really cool if it was like a sick, like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Everything is like such a long form, and it's like, I'm going to tell my story in 12 episodes. That's cool. Can you do it less? I don't genuinely care for most of your C stories. No. Your B stories are semi-interesting and your A story's pretty good. Like, I don't know, take the A story and make it a movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's what I think, going back to sort of the shows that set up a template for the rest of the time, you sort of lose the appreciation for the fact that they did those things that we don't like. And were able to get away with them because there was more thought behind it. Yeah. They used something that they needed to as a device to get, along in the storyline or whatever. And then other shows just come in and, overuse those. Yeah. Rather than having it be something not as a crutch, but as a, as a way to support, we don't know how to necessarily get out of this, or we'll use this expectation to turn around on it. Right. Then everything after it always uses that expectation to turn around on. Yeah, I agree. In the last episode, you had Sun working in her garden, and then you hear rustling in a bush, and you're like, oh shit, she's going to get jumped. And then it's the dog. The dog comes out, and you're like, oh, okay, that's just Lost throwing you for a loop. And then the moment you feel settled, a bag goes over her head, and she's being attacked. Yep. It's, we were talking about the movie Alien the other day, and that's the thing that we kept saying about that movie that does better than anything else, is that it does such a good job of lulling you back into a sense of security before blowing it up, and now you're in like the highest tension situation, and then lulling you back in. And it does that so many times, instead of just going like, your tension is way up here, and then it's jump scares, because you can't, like, when your tension's so high, you can't keep it that high and expect people to be super into it, and that's why you get movies that are jump scares. Exactly. And instead, Alien is, nothing? Yeah. Quiet? We have a signal. What the fuck is this? Oh, this alien fucking thing. Oh my god, it's on his face. Oh, hey, you should come see him. He's like fine now. Oh, okay. Let's eat dinner. Oh, there's no crazy music. It doesn't feel tense. He's just sitting there, and then all of a sudden starts choking, and the chest burster thing happens, and then we're fucking off to the races. Right. And then the thing escapes, and all this stuff, the acid and all the shit, and it's like, it ramps up and brings you, like, puts you back down in your seat so well. And I think Lost has moments of doing the same thing, of like, this crazy tension. Oh no, it was a different way. Oh no, it actually, like, it lulled you back into not knowing, and then ramping you back up. The not knowing in Lost was my favorite part. Absolutely. Because it didn't feel like
when it wasn't people going, where are we going? Well, wouldn't you like to know? When it wasn't that stuff,
Yeah.
it didn't, like what you're talking about with Sun, and it's like, oh, the dog, all like that stuff. That's the stuff that I think that show did so well, of like having you kind of leaning one way and then pushing you the other, because you didn't see it coming.
Yep.
And that it's a lot of fun to watch and like dissect and kind of pick apart and everything.
And what's cool, and I know I mentioned this, you know, the people who listen to this podcast have heard me say this a million times over, but what's cool about being able to come back and look at it now is having that knowledge of what happens. You can see that they actually were putting things in there throughout the show. Now, I agree with you. A lot of times it was like, hey, if you can't find out a way to put it in the episode without it being this stupid line of like, oh, well, what did you do? You had your chance to find out what I did. Like, just that kind of writing isn't, I get why she doesn't do it at that point, but even still, it's like, if I have to think that much further about a line like that, don't put it in there. And that's talking about Kate and Jack.
It's a type of writing that I don't like because you can tell that it's written. Yeah. The stuff that works really well in TV, and I think the moments in Lost, like you're talking about with Vincent, and like the dog comes out and the bag and everything, is that doesn't feel written. That just feels like a coincidental thing, and it happens, and it's you know that it's written, you know it's deliberate, but it doesn't feel that way. In TV and in movies, when you get this stilted dialogue like that, you go, this is a way that nobody talks. Yep. No, if somebody was to say that to you, you would just go, what the fuck? Yeah. And so it's like, I have to accept that for a TV show. I can suspend my disbelief when something is like, when something calls for it. But I feel like when you can't write your people as people, and that's the crutch that you land on because you're trying to be, again, I'm going to keep saying deliberately obtuse because you want to later, oh, this part's going to pay off. Right. Hey man, the setup wasn't worth it. Right. The setup is super weak and you're relying so heavily on like this payoff that none of it feels natural. It's especially because there are so many instances within Lost of setup that you didn't even realize was set up. Yeah, exactly. That's the good stuff. And there's so much of it in there, and I get you have to get from episode to episode, but you also don't. You know what I mean? Like, if you think back, and the only other show that I compare in terms of, like, excellent writing throughout, or the only show that I can think of is Sopranos. From beginning to end. Definitely. I mean, David Chase's method of making a TV show is definitely, like, the way that TV is now for, like, these big shows are all just like, well, we really love The Sopranos, so we wanted to make our own Sopranos. Yep. Just say that in every interview. Well, I mean, we really like The Sopranos, so we just wanted to try to rip that off and just see how we can do. So, well, hopefully people like it. And dumb people did. Speaking of, this has nothing to do with dumb people, but I needed to jump into maternity leave. This is a Claire episode, and then this is the episode where she wants to discover what happened to her while she was gone for those 2 weeks. 2 weeks of her life were gone while she was pregnant and abducted by the others, and she wants to know what's going on because the baby is sick. It's got that rash. It's crying. It's staying up all night. So she gets Locke to go get Jack. And I find Jack really funny in this scene. He's sleeping on the couch. He's sitting outside of the armory. And it's like, that guy can't rest. You know what I mean? Like, he's sitting there, he's asleep, but when he's woken up, he's startled as if he needs to always be on alert. Like a skittish dog. That's a great way of describing Jack pretty much throughout the series. Jack throughout the series, and like, especially I feel like, while we're watching him in this episode, trying to decide what to do with Henry and what to do with like Locke and all of the situations. It's a lot of pressure when you've got like no one that you feel like you can rely on, right? I guess, because he really does not leave any of the responsibility up to anyone else. But he never does, ever. Yeah. In his whole life, especially up until the point that they get on the island that we've seen, he doesn't like to leave the responsibility up to anybody else. Sure. He has a hard time, what we always hear about Jack is letting go. Yeah. And the letting go is being able to disassociate yourself from the responsibility of doing everything for everyone. Yep. You notice he's a doctor, which is like, oh yeah, this is the profession that helps everyone. And like, it almost feels like, and I don't even want to say almost feels like, I think in an earlier episode he talks about it being a family business. Yeah.
So he never felt like he had free will or choice to become anything else.
No, he was always going to be a doctor because that's what he is. It's, again, the family business. It's what he's supposed to do.
But here's the thing. That's what he feels
exactly,
he's supposed to
exactly.
do. And that's why I think, like, the conversations that he has, to jump way back to season 1, with his dad when he's a kid, and he says, oh, you don't have what it takes, Jack. He's not talking about, you're not capable of it. It's... And Christian says something else later in the episode that might work for some people, but not you, Jack. I look back at it now, and I'm looking at this perspective of, I don't think his dad is trying to beat him down.
No.
I think his dad is seeing that his son feels like he has to be something he isn't.
Yep. But the way that he's saying those things makes it sound like Jack has something to live up to. So he takes on that responsibility of living up to something.
Yep.
But that's not what his dad meant.
Yep. And his dad obviously has his own problems. That's why he drinks and and is like,
Christian had a problem. What?
Yeah,
no way.
Right. But you know, like, has all of his problems and drinks and has his issues and like. But what you realize when you hear the conversation between Christian and Sawyer in the previous season, when it's just those two in the bar in Australia, is that he's a coward, and that his whole life he was trying to avoid whatever feeling that he has now for his son.
Yeah.
So I like to notice Jack in situations where he's not necessarily speaking, but just how he's behaving. Because that stood out to me, and I felt like I had to write it down.
Right.
So we know that Henry is still in the armory, and he's been quiet. He hasn't responded since he's been beat up by Saeed. And Jack heads to the beach to go take care of Claire. But in the meantime, Rousseau shows up to the camp. And that's where she tells Claire the idea of, oh, everybody on my team had an infection. Your baby is probably sick. Your baby might die. You need to go take care of this. And then Claire sees images of a girl and a medical facility because of the interaction she has with Rousseau. And then she realizes, I need to figure out what happened to me in this time. So when Jack actually comes out to the baby, I wanted to point this out because he tells her everything is going to be fine. That everything is okay, but he did the exact same thing when she was pregnant in the caves. And she was right. So when she has these visions, nobody wants to believe her.
Right. She
saw somebody trying to hurt her baby or put a needle inside of her or whatever. We don't know why in the first season. Now in the second season, she thinks that the baby might be sick and that she's seeing, this medical facility. And now again, Jack is the one who's telling her that what you're saying is not true. It's like this.
That's interesting.
So she's unhappy with that result, and that's where she finds Libby, who she asks very forwardly to put her under and try to get some of her memories back. I did want to point out, for those who didn't notice, but this is where we talking about good writing by Lost.
Yeah,
Hurley's already there. He's hanging out with Libby. And we haven't seen their interactions or necessarily known what's going on. We just know he's interested in her. But he's already there hanging out with her. And I think that's where Lost really steps up in having, like I was saying, details that exist that aren't necessarily going to be shouted at you. But if you want to see it, it's right there.
I wanted to look up what else Rousseau's been in.
Babylon 5 is the only other thing I know she's been in.
Just looking at some of her recent credits or whatever, it's Amazon series and some different things like that. She did additional voices in Uncharted 4.
She did?
Yeah. And voices in Payday 2. I guess she does some video game stuff. How interesting.
She does have a good,
she's a
sounding voice.
She's a character that I forget about.
Rousseau?
Yeah. She did a voice of Silver Sable in the Spider-Man cartoon in 97. So bizarre. She's just she's a character that I really like, but I definitely forget about for what she's doing and everything, because again, I think she's one of those characters that is deliberately obtuse.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I'm not going to tell you the full story, and I really try to block out all of those things from the show.
And especially now looking back, it's you're impatient as you're watching the show when it comes out.
Definitely.
And this is why I say Lost has a benefit from being able to be watched in one sitting, hypothetically, but it also fails because the part that we were talking about in the beginning, what I think what I try to do with my podcast is have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because when you sit and you talk about the things that you see, the themes and the ideas are what's really driving behind Lost.
Yeah.
And then you can overlook those little shitty things because you're not waiting next week to figure out what's going on to have answers that are simply just...
Definitely.
Oh, you'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck that. That is my biggest gripe with Breaking Bad.
Uh-huh.
And it's the reason why I don't want to watch a lot of other TV shows as well. Because I don't care anymore to sit through that. My time is more valuable.
I agree.
That being said, I am reviewing a show that's now 10 years old, 13 years old every week. So...
We got valuable time here.
But that's more valuable to me. So
yeah, hell yeah.
That's important. Anyway, so she's gonna go do this this memory unblocking thing, and we go back into the hatch where we find that Henry is in there. They finally feed him, and Locke gives him the book, The Brothers Karamazov, which is written by Dostoevsky. The book, not to get too big into it, enters the debates of God, free will, and mortality, and the struggle concerning faith, doubt, judgment, and reason. So if that's not talking about, one, the human condition, or pretty much everything we've seen on Lost so far,
right?
I don't know what is. But that's one of the coolest things about Lost. There's actually, I think, 2 or 3 in this episode of We Go Back, book references that I'm going to bring up. And this is the first one. What I thought was the funniest, though, especially after all of what John says about how Dostoevsky is a great writer and a genius and all of this stuff, Henry Gale just asked for Stephen King. Well, you got no Stephen King? I think that's really, really funny. So they get out, and Jack now questions Locke about why he gave him a book. And I don't understand Jack at all in these last few episodes. In season 2, he wants to create an army to fight the others.
Right.
Now they have, potentially, one of the others there. And he isn't willing to do what is necessary to get the information they need from him. Like, he stopped Saeed from I guess, torturing him. I mean, I know it's not humane, but have they been humane? And that's Saeed's kind of point at the end of the episode where he does beat him, is like, these guys are merciless. They've shot us. They hung you from a tree, Charlie. They stole a woman who was pregnant with a baby, and you're now getting a heart for them?
Uh-huh.
And then again, it's like, in this episode, he's like, why are you giving him a book? What are you dealing with? Why are you flipping again? And what I think I realize is that Jack believes, again, like I said, about wanting to be a doctor. That's what he has to do. Now that he has to face the humanity of what he's doing to somebody, right. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should pull back. Maybe I'm not right. And so now that he's in the armory locked up and they aren't beating him, it's like, well, we shouldn't be nice to him. So you just try to do what you think is best per situation rather than what is best for the good of everybody in the group. And that's kind of a character trait of Jack that I never realized the first time.
That's interesting.
Through.
Yeah.
Is that because he constantly is just making decisions that I feel like he only does because he feels like he has to make that decision. Mm-hmm. So when you do that, you don't make consistent decisions or critical thought out decisions. So then we have this set up for the dynamic between Jack and Locke in this episode, which is the conversation about Hemingway and Dostoevsky. And I think there's a little bit more to that there about how Hemingway always thought Dostoevsky was a genius and couldn't get past him. Now, is this comment that Henry makes towards him, that Locke makes towards him, do you think that's about Jack himself or Jack and his father?
How do you mean?
So Jack and Locke is the dynamic there that I think they're talking about right away.
Right.
But then I feel like there's that bit of Jack who's always trying to search for that perfection and being the genius that he thinks his father is, or that the next person is. Uh-huh. And so I wonder if...
So you're saying Jack is Hemingway in that situation where he sees somebody as like this insurmountable thing.
Right.
That's interesting. I don't know that that's intentional. Mm-hmm. Like in that situation, I don't think that it's written to be intentional for Jack that way, but I definitely agree with you interpreting it and taking it and being able to apply it to Jack and his father in that situation, because you're right. Like when you set it up for, Christian telling Jack this stuff when he was a kid, and then now you're looking at, Jack is Hemingway in this situation and everything. I don't think it's written that way, but I do think that it definitely applies and can give you a lot of insight into Jack's character, especially, I mean, throughout the series and even up to this point. I think you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think that's great analysis.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that people talk about when it's like, well, do you think this is what the writer intended? Like when you're in high school and everything, and it's like, oh, do you think this is what the writer intended? It's like, no, but it doesn't necessarily matter what the writer intended. At some point, you have interpretations yourself,
right?
And you can see how other things apply through other characters and other situations. And I think you've really stumbled onto something, maybe not stumbled, but found something, that definitely applies to more than just the obvious on the screen,
right?
Even if the writers weren't intentionally doing that, I think that, although not deliberate, it definitely works.
And I think that works because what Lost does really well is that they build characters that are living and breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And you do have tendencies and you do have things that will show you characters' consistent motivations, but then you also have things that are very human.
Yeah.
And very like...
And then you have Kate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, when you go back... And this is only through watching it, so I don't agree that it's good as a first run product. But when you go back and you're even now to the point where we're at here, and you see what Kate has been doing her whole life, she never is inconsistent.
Uh-huh.
She's always been kind of a piece of shit. And that's the best way I can describe it.
Uh-huh.
She makes all of these decisions because she's unable to deal with what's in front of her, so she runs away from it. She does something and then, I don't want to deal with the decision I made, and runs away. That is all she ever does throughout the entire series.
That's a great way of putting it.
So while I hate how she is,
I was gonna say, at least she's consistent.
It's consistent and and I think it's intentional.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to necessarily.
She's the worst.
I think and part of it is this struggle within us that you're not supposed to necessarily hate her because she's. The love interest of two of the characters on the show, but you really don't like her.
God, there's just nothing redeemable about her as a character.
Yeah, like
God, every time she's on screen, it just makes me go, ugh.
And man, it even as early as season 1, where she's asked to stay behind, and she follows them. Now I understand it's like, well, why do I have to listen to Jack? You don't have a gun. I understand you think that this is a good idea. What, like, but you're being told by several people no.
She just does stuff. She just does stuff.
She lives on like this survivor's mentality. And like, I get that. She's on the run. But man, her character is one that I always got frustrated with.
Oh, frustrated is a great word for how I feel when I think of Kate.
Every single decision she ever makes is always like, it's kind of like Jack. Why are you doing this?
Yep. Well, that's the thing, and I think we talked about this briefly before or whatever. There's other characters you can compare to Jack and everything, but I think Kate is definitely like Jack, but without the need for the responsibility. Yeah. Because when the responsibility comes, she's just like, no, I'm out of here. And Jack will face it and do his best with it. Yeah. She will like wilt and run away.
To Jack, there is no option to back down.
100%.
100%.
And for Kate, there's no option to stand up.
Yep. And it's crazy to see how that splinter goes off in both directions for both characters.
Oh yeah.
How their decision making is affected by that kind of like carnal truth of their character. But I think, again, that's why Lost had characters that everybody could get into. Yep. Because this just wasn't a, surface level paper character.
Yep. That's great, because even if you don't like the character or whatever, at least you feel something about the characters. I've watched so many TV shows where I just go, I don't care who lives or dies here. Yeah. Like, none of this matters. Yeah. But with Lost, it's been over a decade, and when I think of Kate, I still have like a visceral reaction of like, why? Yeah. Why are you doing this? And it's like, that's not a real person. Nope. Oh, right. Okay. I'm sorry.
Good job, writers.
I forget. It's like, I want to hold it like against Evangeline Lilly or something. Like, it's like she was the one making decisions on an island.
Right.
And it's like, you didn't do anything.
But that's great. That's what makes Lost such a rewatchable show. Yeah. Because they gave these characters a personality past what you saw. Yep. And they talk about this. If you guys have the Lost Encyclopedia, it says what you saw on TV is only the tip of the iceberg. This book shows you everything that was below it.
That's interesting.
And then you go through that book, and it's like, I don't need to know any of this information.
Yep.
But you went this far, and that's cool. And it's cool that you had sort of a book to set it up and have it be around.
Man, after Lost, she wasn't in, like, a lot of stuff.
Right.
But the stuff that she was in was, like, huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I know she was in Real Steel, but, like, ugh, gross.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that one.
The Hobbit...
Was that Hugh Jackman?
Hugh Jackman movie.
Okay.
With fighting robots. Rock'em Sock'em Robots. She's in 2 Hobbit movies and Ant-Man, and that's it.
Yeah. Huge movies.
Those movies are gigantic.
And she wasn't like, just some character.
No, she was like a big part of all of those movies.
She was like a really big part in all of them.
That's so strange.
I think it was one of those things where you get so typecast that you have to stay away for a little bit. I mean, what was she doing before that? She was in the Lizzie McGuire movie.
Yeah, right. She's just like...
she was a Love Link model.
Right.
And I think she was also a model on... Was it Attack of the Show that they would do product like?
I think so.
Physical product reviews. Yep. So yeah, getting back to Lost.
Sorry,
no, that's fine. This is a nice little change up for what we normally get. So we're on the beach. Claire and Libby are going through the procedure to try to get her back in, get her memories back. This is the first flashback I think we see that occurs on the island.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, we still don't necessarily... Well, we're told at this point we might not actually be seeing what is true.
Right.
We'll be seeing, like, it could be a mix of a few different things, reality and dreams and all of this stuff. It's not always 100% accurate. But I feel like we've now had... That's why I brought up 2 instances of Claire having visions that tend to be right, because as we find out later in the episode, all of this stuff existed.
Huh.
That's something that I feel like, while, again, maybe not intentional by the writers, substantiates why we can believe what she's doing.
Exactly.
That's good writing. That's putting something underneath that you don't realize. That's creating rules and not breaking them because it's convenient.
Yep.
So I think that's really awesome. So in this flashback, we see that Ethan is in a Dharma station and he's doing an exam. Claire doesn't seem to remember the crash or anything that's going on. She's going to give up the baby in Los Angeles, and that seems to be where she ticked off. Mm-hmm. And then that takes us into Echo on the beach. He's chopping some wood still. He's all about these trees that he likes from a few years.
I fucking love Echo.
From a few episodes back.
Hell yeah.
Echo is one of the coolest characters in the show.
He's great.
Because he is... You know that he is a gang leader, but then you also know that he is a priest.
Yep.
And at this point, you're like, what happened?
Yep.
I see where the catalyst of you being a priest occurred.
Yep. He's a great character because I never feel like he's... Other characters are trying to... All this responsibility, and I have to do this and that, and all this other stuff. And he seems very resigned in himself that, like, the way things are, and he has, like, questions about stuff, but it's never, like, I never feel like he's really trying to go out of his way to do, like, anything negligent or bad, or he's just very, like, almost sure of himself, and he's he's just, like, a curious character.
He knows... I think he's the only character out of everybody on the show who seems to know exactly what they're doing before and on the island.
Yeah.
In every situation he is in, and I don't mean knows exactly what he's doing as in he has all the answers, but has a confidence in all of his decisions that he will come out of this better off.
I agree with that.
And so I bring him up because him chopping trees... realizing that there's a hatch with tools in it causes him to go to the hatch. He recognizes the cot in the armory and then leverages that for later. And we'll talk about that when I get to it because that brings up more of a bigger point that I want to talk about then. That'll take us back to the beach where we see Sawyer reading Lancelot. So that's the second book now that we need to bring up. And this is a story of a man murdering his wife after he discovers that he is not the father of the youngest daughter. And Kate is the one who's walking up to him as he's reading this book. It also is a book that is told in reflections and in monologues. So Lost likes to tell you, hey, we got some of this storytelling from here.
Yeah.
Also, we got some themes from here. Because
I think they're very deliberate about showing you where they got their ideas. Right. I think they're very forward about their choices about, like, hey, if you think this is recognizable, here's exactly where we got it from.
Yep. And I like that because it gives you a little bit of depth without being like, yeah, we're ripping this off. The whole idea of a man murdering his wife because his youngest daughter isn't his is the one where it relates directly to Claire.
Yep.
Or to Kate. I do that all the time.
I understand, yeah.
And that's cool that it's what she kind of ideally wanted from her father.
Yep. Was,
why didn't you kill him or take care of the situation in one way or another? But maybe I'm overreaching there, but I think that's got to be somewhere within that. But she's approaching him because she wants a gun to go help Claire find this medical facility that she's seen in her flashback.
Right.
And then while on the beach, Claire's giving the baby to Son and gets re-triggered with more comments and disapproval of leaving the baby alone. And in that, we see even more of the Dharma station that they're in. They've created a room for the baby. It's really nice. Right. It's got a mobile with the oceanic planes. It's playing Catch a Falling Star on it, which is what she asked the foster parents to play in the flashback. So this kind of lends itself to maybe what Libby was saying, that this may not be true, because why would oceanic planes be in the little thing, and why would it also know the song that she was going to ask the adopted parents to sing to her baby?
Right.
So I love that they give you this little doubt. Yep. They always try to give you the doubt of what's going on here. We also see Ethan have to go talk to somebody. Now, this voice is very familiar. At this point, we haven't seen very many of the others, but we have seen and heard from one guy a lot, and sounds a lot like that guy. I don't know if you guys are seeing it. It's definitely substantiated by what Kate finds in a locker in this episode when they get to the hatch. I'm not going to say too much more. We'll leave it there and move on into the next part. In the tail section story of the others, they had a list. I never picked up that he talked about having a list for Ethan here too. He's like, you're supposed to make the list and then bring her in.
Right.
You jumped ahead and just brought her in. And it's because on their side of the island, on the people who we're most familiar with, the front section, they had like 40 or 45 people or something when they first crashed.
Right. The
tail section had like 20. So things kind of were more protected on the front end side than they were on the tail section side. And like, I think that was one of the biggest reasons, or a big reason why they were able to terrorize that side and not the other.
Interesting.
Because how are you going to try to, take that many people?
Yeah.
Whoever's on this apparent list that we don't know about. But that is something that I picked up on for the first time ever, which is kind of funny. He also talks about, what he will think. Oh, he won't be happy. So who is this him? They're setting up something for later on that's going to be really cool. But then we also see this girl, this teenage girl, brown curly hair and blue eyes, not related to Kate. I know she looks a lot like Kate. If you've watched it and you thought this looks like Kate, she's not related to Kate. But she is, I think, very deliberately put there for a reason. We find out later in the episode that it might be important to another character. So that takes us on to when they're actually walking to there. I like that Lost writes things into the episode like Kate finding out that the trail ends. And then what you would think is, why is Rousseau actually there?
Right.
Because they start having a conversation and then Rousseau pops out. And then you realize Rousseau created a trail to get them to come out there because she had an ulterior motive. Because we find out at the end of the episode, she's trying to find something as well. But it's, I think that's cool that what you would maybe look at and go, oh, so she's just randomly there? No, they followed a trail. The trail ended right there, and then she came out.
Yep.
Exactly what she wanted. She knew that she could be tracked because she had already gone with Kate on the trek to the Black Rock in the previous season and knows that tracking and these kinds of things are something that Kate is actually good at. So that'll take us out of the flashback into Echo and Jack talking about him knowing that there's somebody in the hatch, and he wants to speak to him. and he leverages, and this is why I love the character of Echo, kind of like what we were saying earlier. He's just very direct and very focused on his path. Mm-hmm. He's just like, well, I mean, I want to talk to him, and if you don't let me, I'm just going to tell everybody that there's this guy in the hatch, and then you're going to have a bigger problem on your hands. So I think that's really cool that that we have that, and I'm going to jump ahead to when he actually meets with him, because I feel like it'll make more sense. He comes in there and he asks him a few questions about where he is and, you know, who he is and where he came from, I mean. And then he tells Henry about the first night they were there and how he killed those two people without even knowing who they were because they were trying to attack him.
Right.
And then he cuts off his beard. I always took that as the two beard symbolized the two little pieces he cuts off are the two people he killed. Uh-huh. And he thinks that whether or not this guy is who he says he is or part of the others, this is his way to sort of explain himself and absolve himself for what he did. He didn't want to behave that way. And this was his penance for it. Mm-hmm. So you can see that this guy who, again, this is why this character is so cool. This guy who used to be a gang leader is now following the penance path. Mm-hmm. Like he's very much into trying to be a good person again. Right. So I think that's really cool. And then we take it into the flashback where we see that the baby is pretty close to being delivered. Ethan takes her out of the hatch to get some sunshine. They mention that the drink is sour. Mm-hmm. That's because the drink is what's keeping her drunk, or drugged up. I don't know if you guys didn't think past that. I remember for a long time I watch it and I'm like, what is the drink having to be sour have to do with anything? Is it a metal container? And then I noticed that Ethan doesn't drink from the canteen either. Oh, well, there you go. He smells it and then he goes, huh, and then puts the top back on. Never really picked up on that subtlety. I hadn't. Huh. So that's really cool. But yeah, so they plan to take the baby. He tells her, we're good people, Claire, which is what the psychic told her about the foster family. Right. That she was supposed to, in big quotes, meet in L.A. They're good people, Claire. They're good people. So I like that these phrases will recur throughout the show that sort of signifies some sort of continuity, at least. Right. She finally remembers, and they find the other station. This is now 3 stations we found on the island. A medical station, an abandoned station, and then, of course, the Swan that we're in. Now, this place is run down and way different than how Claire's visions remember it, but it is there, and it is real. So now this is the second time, that she's been right about her visions, for sure. This is where we get that confirmation. And then also with her finding the little knitted booty that she made for her baby, which triggers the last memory that she was released outside by this girl with brown hair and blue eyes, who was trying to help her, much like Rousseau was trying to help her. Because we see the altercation they come into, or they have in the jungle, where she scratches Rousseau's arm while Rousseau's trying to help her get away. We also know where Claire's head wound comes from at that point too. So when they finally get through all of this and they realize that, there's this tattered clothing and costume makeup in this hatch, and that all of this stuff is starting to have cracks in the armor of these others, Claire asks about Danielle's baby, about Rousseau's baby, and tells her about the woman that she saw in the hatch, a teenage girl, which I think, they're pointing at something pretty clearly here. If Rousseau's been on the island 16 years, and she talks about having the baby there, and then they took the baby from her, Lost is trying to tell you something here. And if you need me to say it at this point, I think I think you might have something wrong with you. But what I appreciate here is that we actually finally get to see a more not deranged side of Rousseau, because up until this point you've seen her very wide-eyed and neurotic and crazy, but we see a more compassionate, heartfelt person in her, and but then it goes back into a survival mode, and you see her appreciate what has just happened to her, and that she kind of has this faith for and hope for what had happened to her daughter. But we go back to, if your baby's infected, you know what you have to do. Because you can't let everybody else die.
Right.
But then that also kind of explains her mindset, because we know she killed her team because she thought they were infected. So, is she crazy?
Yeah.
Or is she just doing what needs to be done?
Mm-hmm.
I love that they give you these character questions.
A lot of gray. A lot of not answering the actual question.
Mm-hmm. And this is where having that conversation each week really gives you the opportunity to dive deep into the characters.
Yep.
Because then you start reviewing what you see on the screen. And that's what really turned me on to Lost, is that I had questions, and the answers were pretty much there if I wanted to take the time to find them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did. And that's obvious since, again, podcast 10 years after the show's ended. But I do appreciate all the little bits in Lost like this, and I really like that they put little things that leave a bit of question, like, is the 2 pieces of beard that Echo cuts off, is that supposed to signify the 2 guys? Hey, what else could it signify?
Yep.
You notice when he gets on the island, he's clean shaven. By that time, he's been growing it out. Each episode, it gets longer. Uh-huh. And that's the other thing that I also appreciate about Lost that I always bring up every week, is that each week they give you a reason to notice change, even as subtle as wounds healing or,
it's good continuity.
Good continuity. It gives you a feeling of depth. And as I'm going through, I never really paid attention to the timeline of the episodes. What I mean by that is like the timeline that's going on in the show. Each episode is like a day of the show, for the most part. A day, right. Maybe 2 days. But it takes over like about a 2-day period, 48 hours. And so it's cool to see the slow change of things. Like even Sun's head wound is slowly healing from when she got jumped. So
right.
just really cool stuff. And to close out this episode, we have in the hatch, Henry brings up Dostoevsky, and Hemingway asks John, who are you? And I think that this is a really cool part, because you get to see that Henry can hear when they're outside of the armory, because Locke, goes and walks out, closes the door, starts to wash the dishes, and then throws everything off the counter, and you get a shot of Henry kind of sitting up in his seat in acknowledgement of what he's just caused. So it's like, well, is he just poking at them? And this, again, all the questions that you give. Is he poking at them because he is another? Or is he poking at them because he's just trying to find anything to use as a ammunition against him? Because they're not believing him that he's right, that he is who he says he is. So that does also show you, I think, the second time or maybe third time that Locke gets angry on the island. Yeah. Which is something that I didn't pay attention to before, that on island, I don't think we see Locke get angry a lot, if at all. And that's part of what I'm looking for as I'm going through the show.
That's interesting. Now. I think you're right. Yeah, he's pretty in check. He's
pretty in check, but he does also kind of course he falters, but that comes, I think, from his too much in one direction. Yeah. I think Echo is the best balance of Jack and Locke. And I think he serves to kind of show this balance that both of them could have. I don't know if necessarily that's interesting on purpose, but I think he definitely does. Because he's obviously a man of God, which is, I've said on the show, but just so you know, I talk about man of God and man of faith are two different things. Having faith and faith are two different things. Faith as a religion is just the noun. Having faith that something will happen is what John is. Having faith in something higher than yourself is Echo. A divine faith. But knowing, more and having the faculties to process what you see, I think is what you see in Echo. And you see that a lot, even when he first comes into the front side with Sawyer, and Jack is just shouting off about take me to them and take me to the others. I want to know what happened. Where's Saeed and all this stuff? And he's like, I'm not taking you anywhere. You want to bring guns and kill people. I don't want anybody else to die. I already had to carry this dude on my shoulder across an island. And then we're dealing with somebody who's now shot dead. Yep. You're going to go there with more guns? No. If I take you there, we're going there with no guns.
Yep.
And that's eventually how they end up going. Anyway, that takes us into The Whole Truth. And this is a flashback episode for Jin and Sun. We start off with a flashback. In Korea, they have been trying to have a baby for a year. And what was supposed to be like an intimate little exchange turns into an argument. But what comes out of this for me is that Jin says, maybe if I'm able to produce your father a grandchild, he'll be easier on me. And like what you see from Jin throughout the series, especially here and especially towards Sun's father, is this proving of worth. Whether or not he has, we've now seen that a lot of characters have issues with their parent, Ana Lucia, obviously Jack,
right,
John, Michael and Walt. A lot of issues with parents. Jin is the only one that I can think of right now that doesn't have an issue with his actual...
You're absolutely right.
With his actual parent.
Yep.
Now, he has shunned his father and claims him dead, but he doesn't have any issues with his father. However, he has issues with Sun's dad.
That's interesting. But even shunning your own father and all that stuff, I guess you still have some of that. But you're right. His direct issue is with Sun's father. That's interesting.
And Sun seems to be kind of, I don't want to say disassociated from her father, but that's almost what it feels like. Like, I don't think you've seen them together on screen at all at this point in the series. And I don't think that they've had any sort of like, even indirect interactions.
Yeah.
You see her and her mom trying to set her up for the matchmaking appointment, but that's you never see her and her father. You see Jin and her father, and him trying to prove his worth about having her as his wife. So I never picked up on that. I think he wants a kid only to fulfill a sense of duty towards his father-in-law. I think it's just like, hey, I'm the man. I'm supposed to provide for my wife. I'm supposed to provide grandchildren for the grandparents. I'm supposed to do all of these things. None of them are what he actually wants to do.
That's true. He has a sense of responsibility or obligation that he doesn't necessarily want, or I think maybe necessarily understand.
Yeah, like he doesn't understand it at all. He just feels like this is how it is, so I have to do it.
Yeah,
and it's like, and I think that's what people who have that sense of duty will do.
Yeah.
And that talks about free will and making your own decisions. It's like, what is a sense of duty? Oh, I have to do this. Well, why?
Yeah. It's the why that he can't handle or doesn't know.
Yep. And you can see that when faced with the why.
Yep.
That's where I think he gets angry. And that's where he becomes, okay, well, the why is because that's how it's supposed to happen.
Right.
I'm your husband, you listen to me. I'm this man, and I'm Viral, and I'm all of this. And that takes us into her back on the island where Jin finds her working in her garden and tears it up. Yells about that he's worried for her and that she got jumped out here and that she shouldn't be out here and all of this stuff. But you can see that all while he is being an asshole, 100% he's being an asshole. What he's talking about aren't selfish reasons. Right. He's upset because he's worried about her well-being, and I think that's something that you can even see going back into the first season. That all of his behavior towards Sun, even going back to Korea, has to do with trying to protect her in the way that he thinks he has to.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm overstepping, but I feel like there's too much evidence against it. Right. So that takes us to Locke, who sits in front of Ana Lucia's tent. He says that it looks like she's been running away from the devil, and she, in one of the few moments that I actually appreciate Ana Lucia, cuts through the bullshit. You haven't talked to me since I got here. It's been 3 days. You want something. What do you want? And so he wants her to go speak with Henry. He says a line that I think is very important to John's character. There's a man in my hatch and I want him out. So first of all, this hatch that he had just gotten into, maybe, let's see, was this episode 16? So maybe 2 weeks ago, because each day's an episode. That's his hatch now. Yep. That's his purpose to him.
Yep.
We've now seen that
that's interesting. It's his purpose.
It's his purpose, and that's why it was such a big deal for him to get inside of the hatch in season 1, because he felt like it was his purpose.
Yep.
He was having too much faith in it. And then you have Echo. That's why I think the line that Echo gives him in a few episodes ago of "Do not confuse coincidence for fate" is one of the best lines in the series.
Yep.
Especially because it's so focused towards that character. So I think that's a really cool setup. Anyway, we see Sun lightheaded walking on the beach, and she encounters the only other married couple on the beach, or of the survivors. I don't think there's another married couple
that's there. Yes, I think you're right,
and that we are supposed to care about. And we talk about, like, what we were saying about third level characters, like tertiary characters, and you see that especially with, like, the whole Scott and Steve thing. It's like, yeah, when we have characters you don't care about, we'll tell you straight to your face you don't care about them.
Yep.
But even though you haven't seen Rose in, like, a season and had any FaceTime with her, she comes on screen and you're like, oh, Bernard and Rose, I'm into them.
Oh, I like them a lot.
I want to see what they have to do. I don't need a million backstory episodes on them. Like, they used the characters they had well. That's really what I'm trying to point out here, is that they used the characters really well, and you see that they are bickering, but they've obviously been together for a while. And they're married. We don't know much about them. We don't know if they're newlyweds or if they're, been married for years, but we know that while they bicker and they have their differences, they still very much love each other because of how they were when they were apart from each other.
Yep.
So I think that that's cool to see the contrast and the comparison between their relationship and Jin and Sun's, who are obviously now having the same sort of trouble that they were having in season 1.
Right.
I also wanted to point out really quick that Locke's behavior in the previous scene, I'd written a note later on down that he's obviously behaving out of manipulation.
It's interesting.
He's going to Ana Lucia, and she talks to him about, did you clear this by Jack and all of this stuff? He's doing this because of what Henry had said in the last episode. So who's calling the shots? Oh, we both called the shots.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, it looks like the doctor's pushing you around. No. Let me prove it to you. I can't think of a more adolescent mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's the point, and that's a really cool observation for this point in the episode. Anyway, that'll take us into our flashback for Sun and Jin. And Jin, their flashbacks are always very emotionally tense and suspenseful, because you have almost 2 stories working together to make one in their flashback, with Jin and Sun's perspectives, and it shows you a lot about how these characters' motivations, where they came from and why they do what they do.
Right.
Hints are dropped that their relationship isn't going well at that point, because we find out that Sun is going to learn English, and she's being very flirty with this guy who I believe his name is Jay from the hotel.
Yeah.
And we now know that she's been learning English from him and meeting him regularly enough. But yeah, I like that it's also dropping hints on his side that the relationship that he was sent up for in America that he told her about and left her for also isn't doing well. But you don't see anything negative. Like, you don't see either of them do anything to each other. I don't even think they touch at any point. And he asks her if she wants a drink, and she gets an iced tea. And you think, she's gonna, give me a cocktail or whatever. She takes a regular iced tea. Like, there's this little bit of showing you what's going on, but it's also making you go, is she cheating on him?
Yeah.
Especially what we're finding out in this episode of if she's pregnant, because in this flashback the whole thing is dealing with they can't have a kid, but now she is pregnant. So it's suggesting without showing you, and I love that. I love that Lost doesn't always tell you shit flat out. Anyways, we see Locke in the bathroom where Jack is taking a shower and he's shaving, and I feel like this is just waving your dick. I mean, what are you doing in here? The steam opens up my pores to shave. Couldn't wait until I was done.
Yeah, no shit.
he is deliberately being confrontational to Jack.
Yep.
He is letting these issues that Henry has brought up influence his decisions.
Really get at him.
Yep. And in turn, because we see Jack's behavior in this episode, influencing Jack's behavior.
Yep, exactly.
Which
well,
is...
how are you going to react to a guy? You're taking a shower and he's coming in. Yeah, the steam opens up my pores. Yo, there's already like a tension here.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? Absolutely. I absolutely understand where Jack is coming from, where it's like, yeah, well, Locke's behavior is influencing Jack. Yeah, I would definitely be influenced by a weird fucking dude that I already don't get along with.
Especially because he's in there going, hey, I think we should bring new blood in to talk to this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, who obviously somebody in mind is Ana Lucia. Okay, I'll talk to her. She's already in there. Like, but it's almost supposed to be frustrating.
Yep.
On purpose.
Yep.
I feel like this isn't an instance of just bad writing where you have a fake confrontation or a conflict, just to have a conflict.
Yep.
This is, look at how people behave and look at how unaware of themselves they are, when really the issue is we should be discovering what is going on this island and who this person is together, because it's really us versus him. But they quote it in the episode. Ana Lucia says it. The only other... this is the only time I really ever like Ana Lucia is in these parts, when she's not the main focus. She tells Saeed and Charlie that Jack and Locke are too busy worrying about Locke and Jack.
Yep.
And I think that is so cool that Lost puts lines in their episodes that will tell you, hey, yeah, this is what we're doing.
Yep.
We are aware.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just sliding things in. We're very intentional about all of this. It's obviously a power play between the two.
Definitely.
So she's in with Henry. She's in with Henry and tells him about the man that she put in the trap.
Right. And
basically, she's in there to tell him, I don't make the same mistakes twice. I want you to not be the guy.
Yep.
I just need to know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want. You help me make that decision, and you'll be fine. She wants a map to be drawn out to where his balloon is so she can verify his story. Yep. Which, why didn't anybody think of that fucking scene?
You gotta give it time.
I get that. Okay, if you want to take it out of the realm of telling a story, maybe you're caught up.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, you get caught up in like, oh, there's this new guy here, and now Saeed wants answers, and he's jumping the gun because he's still mad about Shannon and all this kind of stuff. But then they've had him for like 3 days, and this is now the first time they're thinking, what would be the easiest way to solve this? Oh, go see if that balloon is there.
Yep.
So she wants a map drawn, and that takes us into Sawyer, who's on the beach reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which is a book that explores the quest for a single religion for, say, an adolescent woman who's raised in two families, or in a family with two different theologies in them. And then it's also issues dealing with the puberty and preteen issues of women, which is kind of interesting to see how all of this is like high school shit going on. Henry pushing Locke to push Jack to push Anna to do this. So it's like, hey, whether or not that's intentional, again, drop that in there. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Sawyer calls Sun Sunshine. I love that they keep teasing you that he's gonna call people by their names.
Yeah.
Season 1, when Jack comes up, he thinks that Sawyer's digging through the fuselage. He says, "It's not me, jackass."
Yep.
So you're like, oh, he's gonna call him Nope, call him jackass. He calls her Sunshine.
Yep.
Which is, I think, really, really funny that they never have. I don't think he has at this point at all called anybody by their name.
I don't think so.
I'm still trying to think, and I've been trying to pay attention as throughout, but I still think it's not in there. And then she's coming up to him for a pregnancy test. He doesn't want to give it to her without knowing what she wanted first.
Right.
I think Sawyer is a character who is very misunderstood because he, especially at the time, was like a trope or an archetype.
Yeah.
Oh, here's this outlaw who doesn't give a shit about anybody. But if you pay attention to him, he's never deliberately mean. Mm-hmm. He's just like, oh, I want to look through your stash, but you can't. I'm not going to tell you why. No,
I think he's provocative. He doesn't give in easily.
Yeah,
that's all. It's just like, it's what you said. Yeah, I want to look through your stuff. Why? Well, because I want to.
You don't get to ask. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's...
It's my stash.
Exactly.
He says so. This isn't a pharmacy. You don't just get to walk in and grab whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Like, out of everybody on the show, I would say that Sawyer's character motivations are the most steeped in realism.
Yep.
And like, people constantly demanding stuff from him, he's like, no. Like, in normal TV shows, you'd have, Jack coming up, sir, we want this. And he'd be like, all right, whatever. If it's for the greater good. But he's his own character. He's his own person. It's like, well, if you want it, and I have possession of it, you need to tell me why.
Yep.
Simple as that. He likes to toy with people because it's fun for him. But he's not, I never get the sense from him that he's trying to hurt anybody on the island.
Yep.
And even in his flashbacks, when he cons the people that he cons, turns his back on the one with the kid, and then grows a heart for the girl that he's with
yep.
Cassidy. So
yep.
I don't get the sense that he's ever trying to be a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the hatch, Jack is concerned for Ana Lucia's well-being. She's been in there for a long time with Henry, and he brings up the point of, well, John, how do you know she hasn't, he hasn't snapped her neck? And then John's response of, how do you know she hasn't snapped his? She has as much reason
yep.
as he does to attack him. And it's like, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, now all of a sudden you're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Why again are you flopping back and forth? Like, who cares? Who cares if this guy dies or not? You don't know who he was 3 days ago.
Yep.
This guy might be a threat to you. Stop being a bitch. So that takes us to in the jungle, where we see Sun and Hurley both trying to hide something from each other.
Uh-huh.
She's going to try to go do this test, and he's doing the pregnancy, or he's eating candy. He's doing a pregnancy test.
He's doing a pregnancy test too. He is pregnant.
He is pregnant. I don't know. He's showing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell.
I don't know if you can tell.
He's showing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I wanted to point out is, and this is why I bring this scene up, I love that they just created all these different brands for the show. Mm-hmm. That he's eating an Apollo bar, and she has a completely new brand. It's called Widmore Labs on the pregnancy test.
Uh-huh.
Like that's cool that they keep creating these like brands and having that depth in there.
That's cool.
But I just wanted to point that out to everyone because I always like that detail in Lost. So we go into the flashback where they see the fertility doctor. They find out that she can't have kids, and Jin is like, "Did you know about this?" And she gives the best response. Yeah, because I really wanted to trap a fisherman's son. It's like, no, obviously I didn't know that I couldn't have kids. Like, no, you're insane. Why would I keep this from you? But to be fair, this episode is called The Whole Truth. So Anna comes out and has the map. Then she goes and talks to Saeed about it and wants to find out if that is true. She wants to be sure, and she's going to go to that place. While walking there, she discovers that Charlie has a gun on him. And she's like, well, why don't you give that to somebody who knows how to use it? And he says, well, if I remember correctly, the last time you had a gun, you murdered somebody. So I'm going to pump the brakes here real quick. So did he. He filled a man with bullets.
Oh, that's funny.
Now, he had more cause to. But, I mean, come on.
But he doesn't really have a leg to stand on here.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I don't know if that was intentionally written in there to make us laugh, but it was like, okay, yeah, Charlie, you've obviously put some bullets in somebody, too. So, Sun and Kate, we go back to on the beach, and they're waiting for the results of the pregnancy test. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered why these two characters got lumped in together.
Hey, me too.
They keep secrets. More than anybody else. They have this understanding of not necessarily a second life, but this like being in they have this camaraderie over being in a relationship that maybe is not good. You know, her with her father. I'm sorry, her being Kate with her father and Wayne and all of that kind of stuff. And then Sun with, again, we don't know what's going on with her father, but with the father figure of Jin. Mm-hmm. Constantly keeping secrets from him and not being able to tell anybody what is really going on inside. It's something that I didn't pick up on, but we find out that she is pregnant, and she's kind of like not happy that she's pregnant.
Well, I think she doesn't want to be with Jin. And I think, like, this is going to, like, this is more of a tie.
Yep.
And so at this point, it's like, and also you're trapped on this island.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot happening that, like, I can understand her immediate concern.
Yep. And that's backed up with the flashback where she's, she's talking to Jay and tells him about that she was glad that when they went to the fertility doctor, he told her she couldn't have kids. So this is like the opposite response. She's now like upset almost that she's pregnant. And then Jay tells her, you really should come clean.
Yep.
With your husband about you learning English. You should tell him the whole truth. Which is obviously a tie-in to the name of this episode, and I think obviously a tie-in to the situation going on with Henry.
Yeah.
Because they want to know the whole truth there as well. But in this scene, I think you get the sense that they're about to do something, because he talks about kind of caring for her, and they end on a wide shot of them just standing about 2 feet apart and looking at each other.
Uh-huh.
So I just like that they don't go for it, or that they give you this questioning in Lost, that it's not always just like show, and then like no room to breathe. We have Anna and Saeed talking about people not liking her, and she apologizes for shooting Shannon when they're camped out. It's nicer in the show, but but he understands. He gets that she was just trying to protect the people that she was bringing across the island.
Yep.
So he's not completely upset with her. And what I love about Saeed's character is that he's a lot more judicious than I think we give him credit for. He's able to be like, he is passionate, but then he's also able to take a step back and go, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yes, the woman I love died. You didn't try to kill her because you wanted to kill her. You were trying to kill these others, and that's why we're on this trip.
Right.
So I really like that they give him more of a heart than what you've seen him do in his past.
Right.
So they arrive at the site, and Anna, again, wants to be sure. They are going to go as far as possible to get through it.
Yep.
And then we cut off from there. We don't see them for the rest of the episode, which sucks because you want to know.
Yep.
That takes us to finding out from Jin's perspective what Sawyer knows, which is that Sun is probably pregnant.
Right.
I love, again, because in Lost they do a lot of stuff with audio. They cut up his audio or do something to it. I found out in an email they actually play it backwards.
Oh, really?
So when you're hearing from Jin's perspective, English being spoken, you can't hear what they're saying.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so that kind of triggers the realization from Jin that he needs his wife.
Yep.
And in a breaking of the normal patriarchy, he needs her on this island.
Mm-hmm.
And in the way that he wanted to try to provide for her, she's going to provide for him to help him speak and communicate to these people.
It's good. That's a really good perspective on that.
Yeah. And I love that he goes and from this goes to tend her garden, both literally and metaphorically, because I don't know if they tore up the garden entirely just to have that put in there.
Yeah.
But there's no way that the writers didn't deliberately put in
of
him
course.
Tending her garden
at
the end, and then her telling him that she's pregnant, rather than him having to find out backwards like every other thing that
like everything else.
Yeah, she's actually starting to be upfront with him, and then she tells him as well what the doctor had found out and told her later, which was that she wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
He can't have kids. He's got some sort of fertility issue, but he couldn't tell Jin out of fear of what Jin would do.
Yep.
Because of the association that Jin has with her father, because he's an associate of him.
Yep.
And I think that, her coming clean with that and telling him that she's never been with anybody, and then, that kind of like very picturesque ending is really cool, especially to see.
Oh, it's nice for these two characters.
You always get I don't want to say you always get a really nice resolution between these two characters, but you always have a more emotional response between these two characters than
I definitely think that they're two more emotionally connected characters. Like, as a viewer of this show, like, you feel for them a lot.
Yep. And then we see that Sun is finally happy to be pregnant. Unlike every other time that we've seen this before that. And this will take us to our final scene, which is Jack and Henry in the hatch. And we see that Henry is starting to kind of play the angle on Jack as well. he says, "What's the difference between a martyr and a prophet?" to Jack. And then Jack responds with a very practical answer of, "Well, I guess they both end up dead." Pretty interesting response to that statement, especially if you want to go so far as to relate it back to Jack.
Yep.
Which I think Henry is obviously trying to do here. And what we've seen him do so far, it's really funny to have that kind of grim answer from Jack.
Right.
They invite him to come out and have breakfast. Locke obviously isn't happy about that. That's Jack waving his dick around.
Yep.
And then Henry tells him about what he would do if he was another, setting up a trap and doing all this. And we've been far enough away at this point in the episode from where they were that you're like, oh man. And then he asks for milk and the episode's over.
Yep.
Oh man, these 2 episodes. When this guy shows up, this is when season 2 really starts to get like big for me.
It starts ramping up.
It really starts to ramp up because everything up to that point was trying to set it up. You know, you got all these new characters from the tail section coming over, and so there's this like middle kind of slow part in the show that I remember being longer.
Yeah.
But man, does it really benefit from watching it like this.
Yeah.
Also not having to deal with commercials.
Oh yeah.
Remember how long episodes of Lost felt?
Oh yeah.
Remember that they felt like almost 2 hours long?
Oh, they felt long.
Or they felt like 15 minutes?
Yep.
And then the commercials felt like 2 hours long? But yeah, that takes us to our episode. We're running out of time, so I'm going to kind of rifle through these emails real quick and tell you guys what you guys have been sending. If you guys got emails, email me, wegobackpodcast@gmail.com. I'll be happy to read what you guys have to say. First one comes from Luke. He says, just a note on episode 19, you mentioned that Jack seemed to go from gung-ho attitude towards the others to showing sympathy towards Henry. I think this is another element to Jack's character that you have mentioned before, that he's quick to leap into situations, but only when the real human effect of his actions are in front of him. In this case, Henry, that is captured and injured. He does seem to start to see the bigger picture. It's like Jack doesn't ever stop going.
Yeah, it's what we were talking about earlier, where he's very like gung-ho to like take that responsibility and all this stuff, and then you know he wants to like barrel through stuff, but when he starts seeing the nuance and the almost like the wake of what he's doing, he starts slowing down. And when there aren't, I think what it is that if there aren't immediate results, that he kind of starts not faltering, but starts second guessing himself, where he doesn't necessarily second guess himself at any other time.
Yep.
When he can't get the immediate answer, when there's like no immediacy to like a result, here's the cause and effect, boom, boom. When he doesn't have that effect right away, that's when he starts, I think that's when you start seeing what he's writing in about the, you know, seeing the humanity, like the kind of recourse to his decisions. I think that it's just when he doesn't get the result that he expects, he starts going, and starts having to look at things a different way.
Yeah. And that's a really good observation. Thanks.
That's great.
Thanks for the email, man. I always appreciate when you email in. Next one comes from Jess, and they're talking about the characters of Danielle and Echo. Mira Furlan, who does Danielle, acted weak and strong and is very balanced in that personality, which you see at the end of that episode.
Definitely.
You see that weakness, but then you see the strength. And what I think people forget is how many awards and accolades this show got for its directing and acting.
I was looking it up during when we were talking here, and man, it's nominated like year on year on year for like best TV show.
Yep.
The actors are nominated for like Golden Globes, and it's like, man, it really was the show was like a phenomenon, and it had a lot of accolades, and mostly deserved.
Yep. And it brought me back to a conversation you and I were having about shooting for TV and shooting for movies.
Right.
Lost was shot for a big screen, but it wasn't. It was shot for a TV as well. So you can watch Lost and it has that bigness that a movie has. But it also is episodic, like a TV show, and you get these characters and their motivations. Like he goes on to talk about Adewale is, I don't know if that's how you actually say his name, but Mr. Echo is like one of the most like powerful performances. He's like very serene in certain scenes. He makes, really tense moments even more tense.
Yeah.
But he's not big. He's not animated. His presence is just there by his, acting.
Very natural charisma.
Yep. So that takes us to our next email from Joey. He's recognizing that there are no flashbacks on or off the island on this episode, and that he noticed that the numbers are written on the medicine that Ethan gives Claire.
Ooh.
That's always good. Always notice those little details in the episode. He also points out that this was actually a longer episode of Lost. Normally they're about 42, 43 minutes. This one was like 45.
Really?
Which is interesting for television.
Yeah.
Because you don't get a lot of leeway with TV time. You're booked around commercial time.
Yep.
So the fact that they either cut into commercial time to have that or ran the episode longer shows you that it's season 2 how powerful the show was. So that's a really cool observation that you had there. And then the last email we have is more of a couple comments, but from our good friend Ryan. He says, on maternity leave, he loved the stuff with Libby and finding the calming meditation to recall the memories and delve deeper into Claire's mind. Then the ambiguity that's left to us as the viewers when Libby is warning Claire that the memories could be combined experiences of other memories and everything that's happened to her on the island.
Right.
I think that's an awesome observation. I'm glad that you're picking up on that. And then he asks at the hatch when Echo cuts off his braids, I don't get that. Was that a sign of guilt being released?
Right. It's what you were talking about earlier.
And I think, again, good job picking up on that. It's absolutely that. He's trying to kind of confess or absolve. It's him in a room with one other person. Lost has a lot of confessions, like in a confessional. So I think that's shown here. And then last comment from him from The Whole Truth. He says, when Kate and Son are doing a pregnancy test, I love just the little moments in Lost like this where they point out the obvious of who would bring a pregnancy test on the plane.
Yeah.
Because you could have a pregnancy test show up there and the audience could have that thought in their head and complain about it, and then you just squash it.
Yep.
Yeah, why is there somebody with... Well, I guess we'll never know because that person is gone now. And then that's a great way to have something that you need, a device in the show that you need, be in the episode without having it take you out of the realism, to suspend your disbelief. All right, everyone. Thank you for sticking through this episode. I know it's a little longer. Eric and I like to talk a lot.
Hi, it's us. We talked.
We talked for a long time. Yep. Next week, I will be reviewing Lockdown and Dave. And if you guys want to email me any of your thoughts, theories, questions, anything, wegobackpodcast@gmail.com. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's @KingLordBryan. And then until next week, be happy to talk to you guys. Until then, bye-bye.